SEC expansion is coming as late as 2025 or as early as tomorrow if Oklahoma and Texas pony up enough cash for a Big 12 buyout. But once expansion is official, how do we structure the new and improved 16-team SEC? Let's break down the three main solutions to this question: pods, divisions, and finally, anarchy. Before we start, keep in mind that any solution we have includes one basic tenet. The conference schedule expands to 9 games, so you can say goodbye to playing the traditional late season cupcake opponent. Let's start with the solution that has been talked about the most: pods. Pods would be a first in college football, but could be the future if we transition to a super conference era. In the case of the SEC, a quartet of 4-team pods. Each year, teams would play the other 3 teams in their assigned pod, plus 2 teams from each of the other 3 pods. This is the most popular pod suggestion. The North Pod: Bama, Auburn, Tennessee, and Vandy. The East Pod: Florida, Georgia, Kentucky, South Carolina. South Pod: LSU, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, and Texas A&M. And finally, the West Pod: Arkansas, Missouri, Oklahoma, and Texas. So why is the pod system the way to go for the SEC? With pods, you have the potential for multiple undefeated or one-loss SEC teams. And if history tells us anything, a one-loss SEC team is making the college football playoff. This setup would also allow for the most variety year in and year out when it comes to opponents, as teams would never go longer than a year without playing another SEC squad, or 2 if they went the back-to-back home-and-home route. Honestly, it checks a lot of boxes. But what are the issues? One thing that could be missing is rivalries. A great part of the division structure is you can set up rivals to play each other year in and out, but with smaller 4-team pods that isn't always the case. Take the above scenario. Texas and Texas A&M wouldn't have their annual rivalry game. We can't have that, right, Longhorn fans? The conference championship game might get a little tricky as well, and the SEC would need to figure out how to break all sorts of potential complex tiebreakers. Remember, we don't have NCAA rules for picking 2 teams in a pod scenario, so some work would need to be done to solve that part of the equation. Next, we have divisions. In my mind, divisions are the way to go. Call me a purist, call me an old man yelling at the sky, but I'm just a fan of simplicity. 2 divisions, the winner of each plays for the SEC title. Clear and to the point. But then the question is, how do we break down those 2 divisions with the addition of Texas and Oklahoma? Well, it's pretty simple. East and West, just like the good Lord intended. In the East, we have Alabama, Auburn, Georgia, Florida, Kentucky, South Carolina, Tennessee, and Vanderbilt. And in the West, we have Arkansas, LSU, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Missouri, Oklahoma, Texas, and A&M. This setup actually looks pretty balanced. Dare I say more balanced than the current East and West structure. Of course, we could get crazy with the splits here, keeping the divisions as they are and just adding Oklahoma to one side and Texas to the other. But I think splitting it geographically is the way to go. The only issue here is that there is potential for losing some fun rivalry matchups. In a 9-game SEC schedule, you would play everyone in your division, which would only leave you with 2 remaining games to play a team from the opposing division. On a rotation, that means that you won't get to see cross-divisional rivalries as much as we would like. In this case, games like LSU Bama and LSU Florida are out of the picture and become once every 4-year events. Finally, anarchy, no divisions. This could actually become a reality, but I haven't heard many discuss this scenario. It was even mentioned by SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey, who said on the Paul Feinbaum show that options include the single division structure. It doesn't mean we would go to that, but perhaps there are no divisions. If we do that, that needs to be carefully considered. Here's the problem though. Under NCAA rules, a 16-team conference without divisions would not be permitted to conduct a conference championship game because there's too many teams to play a full round-robin schedule. Call me crazy, but unless the NCAA changes that rule, I see no way in hell the SEC moves to a setup that potentially limits their chances of a team making the college football playoff. On the other hand, if you have a Baylor-TCU situation like we did in 2014, but replace those 2 schools with Alabama and Texas, you might potentially see 2 SEC schools once again sneak into the college football playoff without even needing to play a conference title game and risk one of them being eliminated. Now, we do need to break this down a bit, because the SEC isn't the only conference that's considered dropping divisions. The ACC has as well, breaking it down to where each team would have 3 annual opponents and 5 games against other teams in the conference back-to-back years in a home-and-home format. It's almost like pods without borders, which honestly isn't terrible. Using this model, with an expanded 6 games instead of 5 to take into account the extra 2 teams in the SEC compared to the ACC, you get to play every team at home within a 4-year period. With only 3 annual opponents, however, you are limited in terms of choosing which rivalries continue to be yearly events. However, again, the main sticking point is the NCAA not allowing a conference of that size to play without divisions and still hold a conference championship game. So until some movement happens on that front, don't expect a divisionless SEC to become a reality. And boy did that movement happen quickly, because literally the day after recording this video, the NCAA decided to relax restrictions for determining conference championship games, allowing conferences to determine their championship game participants with or without divisions. The Pac-12 immediately jumped on board and will be running a divisionless format for the upcoming season. Looking back at past Pac-12 title games, it's easy to see how many things could change when you realign a conference and abolish divisions. If things work well for the Pac-12, don't be surprised if the SEC adopts this format once expansion goes down. Of course, within each of these options, there are hundreds of permutations and combinations regarding scheduling formats, so I want to hear from you. How should the SEC be divided? Give me your ideal conference alignment in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe. It helps me out a bunch. Check out this video here where I break down my controversial expanded SEC tier list. And as always, have a great day and see y'all at the next one.